If you listen to the show for any amount of time, you know that I do have a merch store or two, and I don't generally push my merch because I don't feel comfortable hitting you guys up for money. But if you're listening to me on anything resembling a regular basis, you probably laugh at the same things I do. You probably think a lot of the same things I do. So why don't you go check out horribledesigns.com. They have assorted merchandise with funny comments on it, funny t-shirts, funny mouse pads, funny coffee cups, and then some stuff that maybe not necessarily so funny, but is definitely relevant, whether it's a social opinion, an economic opinion, a stance on, things like veganism or whether or not you need essential oils in your life. So, yeah, anyway, that's my little plug. I have some of their shirts. They're comfortable. They're cool. I like them. HorribleDesigns.com. Go check it out. The podcast you are about to listen to contains at least one of the following: strong language, disturbing topics, abusive opinions, generally things that aren't appropriate for little kids or overly sensitive people. So, if any of that stuff's going to get your nose out of joint, this is your chance to turn it off. Welcome to I Had to Say It, the podcast where I talk about things that I feel need talking about, and sometimes they're not getting the attention they deserve. And your feelings, they're not under consideration. Hey everybody, so I had a whole other thing planned out for this episode, and I decided to scrap it at the last minute. As much as I hate doing things 11th hour and having them suffer because of it, sometimes life intervenes. In this particular instance, I kind of felt things might be in slightly poor taste due to the fact that we have had yet another mass shooting here in the U.S. It was a horrific, actually utterly insane act by an individual who climbed up on top of a building and opened fire onto a 4th of July Independence Day parade. Now, the amount of detail that is currently available about this situation is what you would expect within hours of it actually happening. And believe me, as I'm recording this, it is literally within hours of the actual incident happening. It was kind of funny. I didn't even know anything happened at first. I was out in the yard with my friends and family, just kind of enjoying each other's company and hanging out together, doing what you're supposed to do on the holidays, which is appreciate each other. You don't, regardless of where you stand on your politics and regardless of how you feel about this country, you're allowed to feel whichever kind of way you want and get in your feels and celebrate or not celebrate or whatever. But that's the beautiful thing about this country is you have the option of doing it or not doing it. I honestly, I don't give a shit what most people do, other than the fact that the 4th of July this year is on a Monday, Independence Day, followed by going back to work immediately the next day. And without fail, some of the local billies are going to be shooting off fireworks tonight. I guarantee it. I just hope for the sake of the peace and quiet of the neighborhood that they shut up by about 11:30. We'll see how that shoe falls. Or maybe I'll get lucky. It was kind of raining earlier. Maybe the rain will come back and they'll all stay in their houses and I'll get some sleep before work tomorrow. But instead of doing what I was planning on doing and talking more about my general irritations with things, and I was planning on sort of trying to broaden out a little bit. A lot of my stuff has been very U.S. centric the last several months because of all the fuckery I've been having to deal with here. And I was going to try and do something a little more, broad scoped, kind of like when the show started out and I was talking more about, societal as a whole as opposed to very national specific type things. But it's neither here nor there because some jackass climbed up on top of a building and opened fire and killed 6 people, wounded a couple dozen people. I should say there were 26, I believe, reported injuries from this incident. And they said the majority of them were suffering from gunshot wounds. Not everybody. Some of the people were trampled in the panic that ensued after the shots started being fired. And people are saying things like they didn't notice at first that they thought it was part of, people celebrating and all this other shit. And this was not like a random act. This was a very deliberate and planned out act carried out by a sick fuck. And like I said, there's a very minimal amount of information available at the moment. He is in custody, or at least the suspect, the official suspect, is in custody. I don't know how strong the case is on it. There's been all kinds of reports from the mainstream media, the social media accounts of the cops in the area, asking for anyone that has security camera footage of the incident or anybody with cell phone camera footage of the parade to turn it into the cops so they can have more evidence or whatever. And the kid was caught pretty quickly, within the span of a few hours, led the police on a very short chase. I have no real information as to how they identified the suspect. Like I said, I didn't even find out about this till it was already, the shooting part of it was over, because I got some notifications on my phone that people were concerned that my wife and I might be in the area because they know we're in the Chicagoland area, but don't know the Chicagoland area very well. And we are a significant distance away from it where, yes, we were safe. And like I said, we didn't even know anything was going on. We were out hanging out by the pool and just relaxing and trying to enjoy the day before the weather got bad. Because it was really nice this morning, and it got kind of funky around 2 o'clock. So we were trying to get as much enjoyment in the day as we could. And I came back in the house to look at my phone and find out I was getting blown up because people were trying to make sure I was all right. And like I said, thankfully we are. A lot of people can't say that at the moment. And again, it's a shame. It's horrible that this happened. There's no good reason for it. Now, I do take a couple issues outside of the fact that some shitbird decided to open up on an innocent crowd. I don't know the exact reasons behind it. Just based on a cursory trying to figure out what the hell was going on and why were people checking on me, I did come across a few links and articles and posts on different social media platforms stating things about the suspected shooter. He's still in the allegedly bracket at the moment. I don't know how much evidence they have, but I do know he was running. They caught him. This kid basically fits the description of the suspect that they had, which wasn't a great description to begin with, if I'm being completely honest. But they do have someone in custody. This kid who they have in custody, who's listed as the primary suspect, basically, according to what I've found so far, made a video it was posted on his YouTube page like 8 months ago, outlining exactly what happened today as his plan for what he was going to do. It. I don't know what the reasons or the motivations are behind it are. Because after getting inundated with a massive amount of traffic of people going, once somebody found out this video was out there and it got put out into the social media realm and boosted and amplified, and it started getting a ton of traffic and a whole bunch of hits, and then YouTube suspended his channel. So now I'm sure it's out there somewhere. People have it saved. I'm sure it'll resurface. I haven't seen it yet. I really don't have any desire to see it. It's based on some people whose opinions I trust. Their commentary, because they saw it, was basically a bunch of unhinged ranting, and the guy was some sort of extremist. And again, people did exactly what happens every time there's a shooting. I've made my stance on these mass shootings and all the pushes of it. I've made them clear in the past. I'm not gonna rehash that because, frankly, I'm wiped out by this. I don't have the strength or the energy to devote to this. And having a day off, regardless of how you feel about Independence Day in the U.S., having an extra day off and just having it fucked up by circumstance, I don't know, just took the wind out of my sails. But I didn't feel like I could not say anything about this. There were all kinds of red flags, and this kid was making public statements that he was going to do this horrific shit. And it's already looking at like it's another case of, oh, well, he was on our radar. Or, it's going to be one of those lame-ass excuses like, oh, yeah, well, people had informed us that he had these problems, but for whatever reason, we didn't act on it. And while I am by no means an advocate of... Everybody knows at this point I'm not a big fan of government overreach. I believe the government is way too involved on too massive of a scale in a lot of facets of life. And I don't believe, further regulation and giving the government more power is any kind of solution, because today was a prime example of there were a ton of cops at this parade. There were armed officers all over the place. The shots still went out. The shots still happened. And this is going to be an argument. A lot of people are going to say, well, see, this just proves why we need stronger gun laws and why we need to limit this and why we need to limit that. And no matter which way you try and spin it, it's the same conversations over and over again. And I don't think the point is any more valid today than I thought it was yesterday, just because something shitty happened. And the same people who spend all this time stumping around for validation for things like medical health, and anytime it suits their argument, mental health needs to be addressed. But when it goes against, like, saying, oh, well, it's not the gun's fault, it's the fault of this kid for being a complete fucking nutbag, and publicly making statements that he had this intent and then following through with them. And a lot of people are saying, oh, this is a perfect example of why we need red flag laws and da-da-da. Those laws are only going to impact people that are going to follow the law. Criminals don't give a shit about legality. That's what makes them criminals. And I don't want to harp on the issue. The whole thing's well and truly fucked up. And I'm not going to gain any points or score any popularity points with anybody. And I don't care. If you're new to the show, I'm sorry. That's just the way things work. If you're old to the show and you listen on a regular basis, you should know I don't give a shit for the popular opinion. I don't care what people want to tell me is the right thing. I make my own decisions. I live my own life. And I allow other people to do the same things as long as they don't hurt anybody. And the guy who was taken into custody without incident today, I think, based on the information that is currently available to me, there's a really good chance that he might be the guy here. How things got to this point, who knows? Why things were allowed to continue to this point, can't say. The fact that he posted a YouTube video saying he was going to do this 8 months ago and then did it, yeah, that's points to all kinds of shit falling through the cracks, where you'd think that at least they would have been on enough alert to make sure that somebody couldn't get on top of a rooftop with a rifle. But again, I digress. Ultimately, the situation, it happened, and it hasn't changed my overall stance on things. This is not even the most horrific tragedy to happen in recent time, and it's not hitting me any harder because it's closer to home. It's symptomatic of bigger problems in this country, and nobody wants to address the bigger problems. They want the easy stopgap measures. They want the Band-Aid boo-boo fixes. They want to say, well, if we do this, it'll change that. That's one thing if it would be, it's not realistic at all to say we're just going to take all the guns, because it's never going to happen. That's going to lead to open conflict. It's going to lead to a lot of other issues. It's going to lead to people like myself completely pulling any support they have from the side that's pushing for that. You're going to lose moderates. You're going to lose middle-of-the-road people. And the problem is the extremists don't care. They don't think they need the middle. They don't think they need moderates. They think moderates are part of the problem because they don't necessarily wholeheartedly co-sign their bullshit. I don't have any patience for extremism. Not on the left, not on the right. All the gun grabbers are instantly saying this kid was a right-wing extremist and this was a right-wing motivated action. And I'm inclined to say it's possible. Like I said, all the kids, by the time I found out what was going on, all this kids' social media had been locked down tighter than a drum, because they have to be able to release what information is available beyond what's already been seen. And since I haven't seen the video, I don't know the contents of his rant. I don't know what his political leanings were. I don't know what his issues were. I don't know why the hell he decided he wanted to climb up on top of a building and hurt a bunch of strangers. Other than the fact, and this is going to sound horribly stereotypical, but he looked like the fucking type. He's a wormy, skinny little incel-looking son of a bitch with a bunch of facial tattoos and a greasy demeanor in general. And I'm not trying to be overly judgmental, but people who generally are content and happy with their lives have a more put-together appearance. There's a certain degree of rundown and self-neglect that is indicative of larger problems in a person's mental state and their health and their well-being. And people say, oh, well, you're being overly critical, you're being overly judgmental. But it doesn't change the validity of the statement. People that are happy and content with the way their life is going generally tend to have, better hygienic practices and don't necessarily look unkempt in all their social media and shit like that. And they're just general norms that don't necessarily look like they're being ticked. And yeah, profiling to a certain extent. It's making assumptions based on physical traits, but there are physical traits that are affected by mental attitude, by mental state. And so, yeah, there should have been, some little warning signs. Somebody should have been watching out, keeping an eye on this kid. Apparently, I don't have access to the information. Like I said, it's all been taken down off the internet already. So the people who saw it made their opinions. I read some statements from people whose opinions I at least give some credence to. So, yeah, it sounds like the kid was a fucking whack job. He did something that was insane. He was taken into custody without any sort of issues. The police were very polite in taking him down and putting him in cuffs. And I don't know if that's due to familial connections. Apparently, either his father or grandfather, somebody ran for mayor a couple of years ago and lost. And so he's not exactly coming from a shit background. And that particular city is not, it's on the more affluent side of things. The median home value there is a little over $500,000 and things like that. I mean, it's not one of the shittier places. And one of the things I'm seeing is a lot of people on social media that people that were there felt the need to instantly go to Twitter or Facebook or whatever and post their, oh my God, I was there. It could have been me. I could have died. And I understand getting shot at's traumatic. Without any U.S. vet that's been deployed to an active war zone will tell you getting shot at's traumatic. Anybody from the wrong neighborhood could tell you that getting shot at's traumatic. I know people that have gotten hit that aren't military vets, aren't police people. I know people that have gotten caught in crossfires. I know people that have been shot at. I know people that have been shot. And it's a not a fun experience. It's a terrifying experience. The fact that people felt the need to take to Twitter and Facebook and TikTok and make these posts about, oh my God, I was there. I could have died. Oh my God, I had to protect my kids. This is ridiculous. We have to save the children. We have to take everybody's guns. And immediately, the amount of people that pounced on this is really what's getting stuck in my craw at this point. Yes, it was traumatic. Yes, people need to vent and to talk about things. People need to make 100-post long Twitter threads because they want to unload all their shit onto social media. I don't really understand the mentality behind that, but how much room do I have to talk? I sit down in front of a microphone and bitch about things every week and put it out into the void for people to listen to and decide whether or not they want to agree with me. So, yeah, I mean, I kind of get it. We want to feel like we have a voice. We want to leave things for posterity. We want to leave a record. Some people want to vent. I hate to say it because it feels terrible, but a lot of these people are like, you see these threads and all of a sudden it's, oh, well, we would love to talk to people that were on the ground. I mean, just like the parasites come out of the woodwork. The amateur true crime podcasters, the actual professional media types, which, you know where I stand on these issues. I don't think they're worth a damn either anymore. They're just glorified people with an agenda to push. And they want a story, and they're willing to, take whatever they can get and make it fit their narrative. And that's up and down. That's all across the spectrum. That's both sides of the aisle. That's the politicians that are in office. When we have people that, for whatever reason, have worked their way into keynote positions who want to lie and exaggerate and bullshit around about things that have happened to them and how they relate to these things. And I'm not naming names or anything, but I'm just saying there's certain people in recent weeks that have been making very public statements on the younger generation side of the political arena that I really question the sincerity of it. Because if you were telling the truth about a story from your past that was about a horrific, nightmarish ordeal, you'd at least, remember some details where you wouldn't say, well, it was around this time and it sort of happened this way to me. Yeah, no, that's not how trauma works. I know real victims of traumatic situations, and they remember a lot more detail. It's not, well, it could have happened somewhere between here and there. But I digress. I'm getting off the train of thought I had. And my train of thought was, like I said, the people that are coming out of the woodwork and trying to instantly get their spin on things and trying to talk to the people who were there and say, oh, well, I'd love to get your information. I'd love to get your... And that's why people are putting this shit on social media in the first place. But at the end of the day, it's not going to fix the problem. It's not going to. It's emotional. It's knee-jerks. It's reactive. And it's getting amped and hyped up. And yes, this was a horrible event. This was a terrible thing. And bad shit happened. And bad shit keeps happening. And there are stories coming out about people that were doing heroic things, trying to get people off the street, into buildings, into shops, trying to get them out of the line of fire. They were all locked down for a couple of hours while people were trying to figure out what was going on with the shooter, and the shooter was at large and all this other stuff. And now that the shooter's been caught, what's going to happen, what's going forth. And it's all kind of, it all brings up the same talking points and the same echo chamber shit that keeps happening. And it's kind of frustrating for me because neither side is going to give. And honestly, like I said, you know where I stand on this issue. If you've listened any kind of time, I don't want to put my safety and my family and my well-being in the hands of a reactive force that is going to be minutes, if not longer, away when shit goes sideways. And realistically, I don't believe that there is any kind of fix where it's like, oh, well, we're just going to make all guns illegal. That will never work in this country. It's antithetical to what being an American citizen is. And if you don't like it, that's too goddamn bad. There's a reason why this country was set up the way it was. And it was never intended to turn into what it has become. The complete lack of personal responsibility that anyone takes for anything ever anymore. Everyone's always looking for someone to blame. Everyone's always looking for something else that is the deeper root cause, so they don't have to take any personal responsibility for things that go on in life. And then all the arguments of, well, if we outlaw all these guns, then it won't be so easy for the criminals to get them. Yes, it will. The black market is always going to exist. There's always going to be ways to get your hands on things. Most criminals aren't following laws to begin with. That's what makes them fucking criminals. And I keep saying this because it's just this where I get hung up on this. Law-abiding citizens already are following the laws. More laws aren't going to make less criminals. More laws are going to make more criminals because at some point the law-abiding citizens are going to get fed up. And they're going to do what they think is best for them, regardless of what's the legality of things. And that's just the way it is. And in the meantime, we've got all these people that are using tragedies to push their agenda, to push their thing. We've got photos coming out of this guy who is the alleged shooter, and they've got somebody was circulating, oh, well, he's a right-winger, he's a Trumper. And they have a picture of him at a Trump rally. Yeah, he was at a Trump rally. There were Trump signs all over the place. He was dressed up as fucking Where's Waldo. I really don't think that was somebody who was there with a serious stance of, I'm here in support of Trump. And then there's another one, a picture that could or could not be him. It's really kind of hard to tell from the angle. It's like somebody with their head down with a Trump banner, like a cape on. And they're saying, oh, well, that's him. The only thing you can really tell from the picture is it's a scrawny bastard with dark hair. And his head's down. You can't see his face. So it's kind of hard to say, oh, yeah, that's definitely him. It could be some other scrawny degenerate living in his parents' basement, jerking off to fucking weird-ass ooh-woo hentai porn. And sitting around feeling bad for himself and deciding he's going to go try and make a mark on the world by doing something fucking horrible. And that's the thing that really gets me. These tragedies happen and people don't allow even time to breathe. They don't let people get their feet under them before they're, oh, well, let's use this to push our point. Look, here's another example of how fucking right we are. Leave the people alone. Give them time to collect their thoughts, time to find out if their families are okay. Don't sit there going, oh, well, I need to talk to you immediately about your experience, because the people that are going to reactively go, okay, it's a great thing that, yes, let me talk to you, are probably full of shit. Because if you're directly involved in some seriously traumatic shit where your life was in danger, the last thing you want to do is immediately rehash it with some stranger from the fucking internet. So the fact that we are just so passé about having no class when these things happen, I mean, as a society, we've come to the point where there's just so much of a need for this quick fix and so much of a need like, oh, I got to be the first one to have a story and I got to be the first one to get a reaction and I got to be the first one for this. Everybody wants to be the first to the line without actually worrying about doing the right thing in circumstances. Media information gets reported wrong or partially accurately. And then, they make some big stink about it being the first to the headline, but when they have to make a retraction, they're super quiet about it and they do it without any fanfare or circumstance, and they genuinely can ruin stuff about it. And just I can't deal with this shit. My thoughts go out to all the victims and all the people who lost someone today. It's a fucking tragedy. It's a shame. But until we start addressing the bigger issues, until we as a society learn how to grow the fuck up, and we need to get back into some things that we've gotten away from. I'm all for progress. I'm all for people having their lives and their liberties and their freedoms. But the other side of liberty and freedom is you have responsibilities and you have an obligation to fulfill things to deserve those rights and freedoms. They're not free. They're not just handed out. You have to behave accordingly to deserve them. And that's something we've forgotten these days. Everybody seems to think they deserve whatever the fuck they want, and the rest of the world be damned, because they don't have to do anything. They just deserve it. They are owed it. They are entitled to it. Yes, entitlement. It's a very real thing. People think they deserve shit just for being them. And when that attitude started becoming prevalent, when I was a kid, that was called being a fucking brat. Nowadays, that attitude is celebrated and lauded, and we're not better off. For all the progress we've made, the world is a shittier place now than it was 20 years ago, and I'm tired of trying to act like it's not. We've made a lot of good forward progress, but we've also made a lot of slips and slides along the way, and we never bothered to recover from them. We said, oh, well, this is the way the people who we didn't like their way of thinking treated things, and that must make it wrong. Not every idea that we got away from was a bad one. There were principles and concepts that kept shit like this from being so goddamn commonplace. You know, morals, beliefs, accountabilities, without going into all the other shit, the other, personal shit, the stuff that only affects you in your life. Yeah, that's fine. Do whatever you want to do to make you happy, to be whole, to live your best life. But that does not exempt you from taking responsibility for the shit you do, for being accountable for how your actions impact other people, for realizing that you are not owed anything. And when you don't think you are automatically owed anything, you have more of appreciation for what you have. When you have to actually go out and earn the shit you want, it means a lot more than something that is just handed to you because you think you should have it. And we need to get back to that. That's how we're going to fix this country. It's not going to be by cramming more and more draconian regulations down the people's throats, because that's going to only satisfy a small portion of the people that think it's going to fix the problem, and the rest of us are going to get a lot madder, and the conflicts are going to get worse, and things are going to just go sideways. So for now, hug your people extra tight tonight. Tell them you love them. Tell them you're glad they're still there to hear from you. I've had other things going on with friends of mine who've lost people in the last couple of days, and it's shitty and it's terrible, and I've got a lot of friends right now that have been in my thoughts because it happened to them. It could happen to me. It's unforeseen. And, just be good to each other. And for now, that's what I had to say. Thanks for listening to another episode of I Had to Say It. If you liked what you heard, leave a review, give us a follow, give me some feedback. And if you didn't like what you heard, leave a review, give me a follow, give me some feedback. I'll try and fix it. Check us out on all the social media platforms. At I Had to Say It podcast is the trigger for all that stuff, for the search term. And if you want, check out the website, www.ihadtosayitpodcast.com. There's links to people that have been involved with the program, things I've talked about. There are some links available for some merch that we're working on, and there are ways to contact us there as well. And thanks for listening, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.